3, 2, 1. It's over. The Philadelphia Eagles have won Super Bowl 59. What a game. What a season. What a team. The greatest Eagles team in modern history.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions once again, and they did it with relative ease. They won Super Bowl 59 in dominant fashion, as they led 24-0 at the half and were up 40-6 at one point over the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the back-to-back defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, who were attempting to be the first ever team to win 3 Super Bowls in a row and were slight favorites in the game. But the Eagles steamrolled them, and they did the same thing with the Commanders in the NFC Championship game, and they really did all playoffs long, as their 145 points were the most in NFL playoff history, meaning the team with the number 1 defense in the league also featured the most prolific offense in NFL playoff history. Today, I have 5 reasons why the Eagles won the Super Bowl this year, and it starts with their Super Bowl MVP quarterback Jalen Hurts and some redemption. Hurts led the Eagles to Super Bowl 57 2 years ago, but came up just short, 3 points to be exact, against the Kansas City Chiefs. Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that game, that's just a fact, but he wasn't able to win the game. Hurts did all he could in Super Bowl 57, but his defense failed him. A defense that allowed just 20 points per game in the regular season and had 70 sacks, the third most by a team in NFL history. But they allowed 35 in this one and sacked Mahomes 0 times. Hurts finished second in MVP voting that season, only behind Mahomes, but experienced serious regression in 2023. In his third season as the Eagles' full-time starter, Hurts had his worst year yet. He threw for a career high in touchdowns with 23, but that was just one more than a season ago, and this time it was on way more attempts. His interceptions went up, his rushing yards went down, and in 22, his regular season record as a starter was 14-1, but 11-6 in 23. As a result, instead of a Super Bowl appearance like the season before, Hurts and the Eagles fell flat on their faces over the final 7 games of the season and lost in the wild card round of the NFL playoffs. After the 2022 season, where they appeared in the Super Bowl, the Eagles thought they had a franchise quarterback on their hands. To show their commitment, they gave him a 5-year, $255 million contract. After a failure of a 2023 season, they were beginning to question their investment. Now, the Eagles have seen this before. Carson Wentz was a first-round pick by the Eagles in 2016, and after an MVP-caliber season in 17 and winning a Super Bowl that couldn't have been won without his contributions, despite him being on the sidelines due to injury, then, quite frankly, a mediocre season in 2018, the Eagles still wanted to reward their QB and show their faith in him by giving him a 4-year, $128 million contract that offseason. But he didn't play up to their standards in 2019, so they decided to make a backup plan, drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round of the 2020 NFL Draft. Long story short, Wentz, feeling the pressure of a rookie QB behind him, had a poor 2020 season, was benched after a 3-8-1 start, and was traded away that offseason, handing over the reins of the franchise to Jalen Hurts. This could have served as a cautionary tale to Jalen. Just because Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, and the rest of the Eagles' decision-making brass chose to commit to you long-term doesn't mean they won't move on from you if they feel it is necessary. Now, in 2024, Jalen Hurts had to prove himself worthy of that $255 million deal or risk losing his job the same way Carson Wentz did before him. MVP runner-up with a Super Bowl appearance in 2022, potentially on the hot seat in 2023, how would he respond? Well, first, let's look at why did he falter in 2023. Rumors came out after the season that Jalen was feeling the pressure of the big contract. He started trying to do too much, and that was reflected in his stats. Despite throwing nearly 80 more passes than the year before, he threw just 1 more touchdown pass and 9 more interceptions. He actually took less sacks, but that doesn't mean he was avoiding sacks and making big plays. These are the moments where he was trying to do too much and the ball would end up in the hands of the other team. These things would have to change in 2024, and they did. The key to Hurts and the Eagles' success this past season was Jalen doing less, believe it or not. Sure, his passing yards per game was way down compared to the previous 2 seasons, but his yards per attempt were exactly even with that of 2022. He took sacks way more frequently, which was frustrating to watch at times and felt like a drive killer, but he knew he was better off doing that than turning the ball over. But Hurts wasn't this effective the whole season. No, the first 4 games of the season before their Week 5 bye were very similar to the 2023 version of Jalen Hurts. He was throwing the ball 33 times a game, had the same amount of touchdowns as interceptions, 5 fumbles, and the Eagles were a measly 2-2. After the bye week, the Eagles completely changed their approach. In the following 10 games, all of which Jalen started and had finished, the Eagles went 10-0, and Hurts played some of the most efficient football of his career. Throwing the ball just 22 times a game now, Hurts threw 14 touchdown passes and just 1 interception to the tune of nearly 70% completions. Hurts had the 5th best passer rating in football this year, and he put that on display throughout his 4 playoff victories this season. Hurts has assumed a new role within the Eagles' offense. He's not the dynamic playmaker he'd shown flashes of in the past. Instead, he does what is asked of him and does it better than anyone else. And when he's asked to do more, he succeeds.
Huge play. Now the Eagles get it back. Looking to run some clock, or maybe throw the dagger. Hurts going deep for it all. Devonta Smith. He has got it. Touchdown.
Of course, none of this would be possible without one guy. Hurts has had some incredible offensive weapons throughout his career in A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. But all those weapons in the pass game forced the Eagles to lean on the pass, a strategy many offenses have adopted as the years have gone on. But the Eagles went old school this year. They went back to their roots, a franchise that featured the legendary Steve Van Buren in the 40s.
With the championship riding on his shoulders, Steve Van Buren blasts off right tackle for the game-winning touchdown.
And they began to lean on the best player in the National Football League, running back Saquon Barkley.
Into the clear, through the snow, all the way home. He's hit another home run against the Rams.
Barkley was the best player in football this year, bar none. He rushed for over 2,000 yards, becoming just the 8th player in NFL history to do so, and he did it in 16 games. He broke the record for most yards in a season, including playoffs, with 2,504. Statistically, the best season by a running back in NFL history. But it did not start that way. Despite giving the injury-prone, one-time All-Pro, 2018 second overall pick a nearly $38 million 3-year contract, the first few weeks of the Saquon Barkley era didn't exactly go as planned. The highlight, or should I say lowlight, of Saquon's Eagles tenure through 2 weeks was a dropped pass by Barkley against the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football that would have sealed the win. Barkley flat out dropped it with less than 2 minutes to go after the Falcons had burned their final timeout, and the game would have been sealed with a first down. Instead, the Eagles settle for a field goal, go up 6, and the defense promptly surrenders a 6-play, 61-second drive that ends in a game-winning touchdown and PAT for Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. Rock bottom? Not yet. In Week 3, the Eagles had a meeting with the New Orleans Saints, who entered this one averaging over 45 points through 2 games. But the Eagles' defense stifled them, holding them to just 12 points, and Saquon Barkley emerged.
Here's Barkley, Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's the guy. He's going to take it. Touchdown from 65.
A Week 4 meeting with the Tampa Bay Bucs was up next, and the Eagles would be without Lane Johnson, Devonta Smith, and A.J. Brown in this one due to injury. And with a Week 5 bye coming up, that meant pack things in and reevaluate this season during the off week. A crushing defeat in Tampa was expected, and it happened. But if not for Saquon's performance in New Orleans, the Eagles may have been on their bye week looking to rebound from a 1-3 record. By the same token, if not for Saquon's drop against the Falcons, the Eagles could have been on their bye week looking at a 3-1 record. Instead, they were 2-2, and changes needed to be made. That much was clear to Eagles All-Pro tackles Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, who told Nick Sirianni what the change needed to be. Mailata simply told Coach Sirianni they have a really good offensive line and a really good running back. It would make sense to take advantage of it. And when someone of Jordan Mailata's stature speaks, 6'8", 370 pounds, you listen. And listen, Sirianni did. Taking a look at Saquon's numbers through the first 4 weeks of the season, they're not bad numbers by any stretch of the imagination. He was on pace for a career year if he could stay healthy. He'd only played 16 games twice in 6 seasons before joining the Eagles, but when the Eagles added Barkley, they had hoped he would transform their offense. Through 4 weeks, the Eagles were 15th in the league in points per game, so definitely not a real transformation to say the least. In Week 6, there still wasn't a transformation. They won, but it was at home against the lowly Cleveland Browns, a team who had finished the season with a record of 3-14, and the Eagles squeaked out a 20-16 win in a game they were favored by over a touchdown in. Barkley was essentially neutralized by Jim Schwartz's defense, rushing 18 times for just 47 yards. Hurts himself had 14 rushing attempts, perhaps too much reliance on the quarterback still, and as the Eagles were sitting at 3-2 with copious talent on the roster, calls for Nick Sirianni to be fired grew louder and louder, and so did his antics. Week 7 marked the turning point in both the Eagles and Saquon Barkley's seasons. After as unimpressive as a win can get in Week 6, the Eagles trounced Saquon's former team, the New York Giants, 28-3, with Saquon running for 176 yards and a touchdown. Barkley sat out the fourth quarter, resulting in just 17 carries, but as a whole, Jalen Hurts threw the ball just 14 times compared to 45 rushes for the Eagles. This win over the Giants marked the beginning of Saquon's dominance and Hurts' shift to a game manager. Just don't tell Nick Sirianni. Over the next 10 games, Saquon Barkley was unstoppable. His rushing attempts per game went up from about 18 to nearly 24, and the rushing yards increased with it. He averaged 134.7 rushing yards per game over those 10 weeks, with impressive performances like his game against the LA Rams in Week 12. Barkley ran for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns against LA and added 47 receiving yards, totaling 302 yards for Saquon Barkley in Week 12. Of course, this served as a preview of the Eagles-Rams divisional round matchup. As a steady stream of snow fell from the sky and blanketed the playing surface in South Philadelphia, Saquon Barkley scampered into the end zone for not one, but 2 60-plus yard touchdowns. Barkley finished the game with 205 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, breaking the record for most yards from scrimmage against one team in a season, as Barkley now had 534 total yards on the Rams in 2 meetings. He followed that performance up with a 3-touchdown game against the Commanders in the NFC Championship, sending the Eagles to Super Bowl 59. But in the big game, it wasn't Saquon Barkley who was the difference maker. The Chiefs' defense was able to bottle him up. He ran for just 57 yards on 25 attempts, and the Eagles still dominated. The Eagles won that game for a lot of reasons, but it's tough to argue anyone had a bigger impact than Vic Fangio's defensive unit. The Eagles' defense held Patrick Mahomes to 33 passing yards and 2 interceptions at halftime as they led 24-0. Vic Fangio transformed the Philadelphia Eagles' defense from one of the worst in the league to the best, helping lead the team to a Super Bowl victory. In just one season, he took a struggling unit ranked 30th in points allowed and turned them into an elite defense through hard work, discipline, and his signature defensive schemes. I made an entire video prior to the Super Bowl detailing Fangio's profound impact on the team. Be sure to check that out for a more detailed description on Fangio's effect. It's in the mind of Fangio where much of the magic lives. A defensive savant with 40 years of professional experience, he's described by players and former colleagues as a coach who can identify opponents' tells and decode offenses at a virtuoso level. Unearthing nuggets he'll distill to his players, detail by painstaking detail, during the week. He deploys a scheme he has spent decades cultivating, and others around the league have long tried to duplicate, but is adaptive enough to evolve in real time if a game takes on a different form than anticipated. Vic Fangio's impact was felt across the roster. Under his guidance, second-team All-Pro Jalen Carter increased his workload and became a dominant force, while unexpected stars like Zack Baun thrived at inside linebacker, becoming a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. Nolan Smith, previously considered a bust, stepped up after Brandon Graham's injury, delivering a stellar playoff performance. Rookie corners Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean also emerged as key contributors, solidifying the secondary with safeties C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship. The Eagles' defense played a crucial role in their playoff success, forcing 13 turnovers, with 3 of them coming from Patrick Mahomes on Cooper DeJean's now iconic pick 6, Zack Baun's interception, and Milton Williams' strip sack. Fangio's arrival marked a shift in Philadelphia's defensive culture. His emphasis on increased practice intensity paid off, reshaping the team's identity. His defensive schemes built on disguise and adaptability helped neutralize top offenses such as Kansas City, as the Eagles were able to avenge their previous Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs. After 40 years in the NFL, Fangio finally secured his first Super Bowl ring. His influence on the Eagles' championship run proved that sometimes all it takes is the right leader to unlock a team's full potential. Which brings us to our next reason for their victory. There are 3 men in NFL history to win a Super Bowl and have a winning percentage over 700. Those men are the legendary Vince Lombardi, of course the namesake of the iconic Super Bowl trophy, John Madden, who has the renowned video game franchise named after him, and the other one? Nick Sirianni, the guy who has faced non-stop scrutiny from the media and has been characterized as a fool. But Sirianni's now a Super Bowl champion. You don't do that by accident. At the same time, I'm not going to say the criticism of Sirianni has always been unfair. He can be a bit much sometimes, and it's more frustrating when the Eagles are struggling. That being said, the guy hasn't struggled very much. In 4 seasons as the Eagles head coach, he's been to the playoffs all 4 times, been to the Super Bowl twice, and now he's won it once. His overall record is 54-23. All he does is win. But we all know how Philadelphia is, and he was under fire most during the 2023 collapse, perhaps the worst collapse in Eagles history since Rich Kotite's 1994 Eagles that lost the final 7 games of the season. Kotite didn't have a ton of success, but 2 years prior in '92, he coached the Eagles to their first playoff win in over a decade. Even still, newly minted owner Jeffrey Lurie decided Kotite needed to go and fired him after the collapse. Was Nick Sirianni poised to suffer the same fate following the 2023 disaster? Well, no. Lurie and general manager Howie Roseman decided to hang on to him, much to fans' dismay, and 1 year later, he's a Super Bowl champion. Think what you like about Nick Sirianni. Call him dumb. Say he's clueless. Assert that he doesn't do anything on the sidelines. You can say all of that, but it doesn't change the truth. The Eagles players love Nick Sirianni. They play hard for him. He's a great leader. He's open to change and outside voices. That's been evidenced many times throughout his tenure with the Eagles, beginning in 2021 when he handed off play-calling duties to offensive coordinator Shane Steichen. Then, take a look at this year, where he changed Eagles' practice frequency, duration, and intensity based on suggestions from Vic Fangio. How about his willingness to completely alter the identity of the offense following the bye-week conversation with his offensive linemen, switching to a run-first attack? Sirianni, much like Fangio, is able to connect with his players and adapt to everyone's needs around him. And in just 4 years as Eagles head coach, he's starting to develop quite the coaching tree, with head coaches Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, and now Kellen Moore having coached under him before taking their positions. The guy knows what he's doing.
Hard count, nobody budging, and a timeout.
And that brings us to our final point, the one that allows for every other point to exist: Howie Roseman. Roseman's construction of the roster is the biggest reason why he just won his 2nd Super Bowl and is the only man to bring a Super Bowl to Philadelphia that he's now done twice. Roseman just had one of the most impressive drafts we've ever seen last offseason, headlined by the duo of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Quinyon has quickly become one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and DeJean has become one of the best slot corners in the league, as evidenced by his now legendary pick 6 of Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Additionally, he selected edge rusher Jalen Hunt in the 3rd round, who played an important role for the Eagles in 2024, and linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in the 5th, who is expected to play a big role in this defense in the coming years. But it's more than just a draft class. The roster truly didn't have a weakness. That's how they were able to absolutely decimate the Chiefs in Super Bowl LAX. The Super Bowl was the perfect example of why the Eagles were such a good team this year. Sure, you can sell out on the run and completely shut down Saquon Barkley as the Chiefs did, but you'll still have to figure out how to stop A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts. And even if you are able to limit them, as the Chiefs weren't, you'll have to face the best defensive unit in the league. A defense that has been built through the draft. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams. These are all guys who played huge roles on that defense, and all of them were drafted by the Eagles. Roseman built the defense and hired the perfect guy to lead them in Vic Fangio. He drafted Jalen Hurts and never lost faith in him, even when the situation seemed dire. Same goes for Nick Sirianni, who he hired and stuck with through the fire. And of course, he signed Saquon Barkley. No matter which reason you think was most important to making the Eagles world champions, it started with Howie Roseman. So there you have it, the 5 reasons the Eagles won the Super Bowl: Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Vic Fangio, Nick Sirianni, and above all, Howie Roseman, as well as owner Jeffrey Lurie. That does it for this one. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more, and feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.